Rangers.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the night that we do the thing. It is book club. It is the third week of October. We've done something a lot different that I really, really love this year for October. Instead of going into a night, this time last year we were finishing up The Godfather, which was awesome. But I said, you know what? What if we do 4 spooky short stories instead? And here we are for the third of 4 installments, and I have a very special guest co-host tonight, and that is Rich Barris. What's going on, Rich?
Living the dream, brother. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to it.
You know, your name came up a bit. I was already considering asking you because you already have a book club of your own, and you know it's not going to be that long to get through this. I mean, anybody who read this was finished in 15 minutes. So we've got the Masque of the Red Death by Edgar Allan Poe. This is a often cited story when I am leveling a lot of socio-political analysis over the years, and we're going to see why. But you know what? Before I go through the plot summary and all that stuff, what are your major takeaways?
Look, you know what I thought of immediately? I probably read this, and I love Poe. We have a collection of classics that we think the kids should read. Of course, everyone talks about less dark stuff, not the Emily Dickinsons, not the Poes, right? When we think about American literature,
Yeah,
I love Poe. And, many people know Telltale Heart. What I thought of immediately, because the first time I read this, I must have been 13, something like that, like ballpark. And we didn't have anything like this back then. So immediately when you reread this piece, what do you think of? I immediately think of COVID. I think
now you do.
Yes. Yeah, of course. I think of how, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, but the elites and their arrogance and hubris, believing, I mean, arrogance is the word, believing that they could defy, Frank, defy death, defy nature, defy, think about what we did in COVID, Frank. We arrogantly thought that we could hide from a germ.
Yep.
I mean, it's insane if you think about it. Just like, of course, the star of our story believes that he can hide away behind his palace and his riches and, have all of the people come to the masquerade, and he can still have his cake and eat it too. And of course, how does it end for Prospero?
I know. Right? Now, well, let's get through it. Let's get to it then. It's very, very well put. I mean, the stage is set with an introduction of the plague that is ravaging the countryside, the Red Death, and it sounds a lot like Ebola. It just it liquefies you into a bloody soup, and all within a half hour of becoming infected. Here's the opening paragraph. The Red Death had long been feeding on the country. No sickness had ever been so deadly, so great a killer, or so fearful to see. Blood was its mark. The redness and the horror of blood. There were sharp pains and sudden feelings that the mind was rushing in circles inside of the head. There was bleeding through the skin, though it was not cut or broken, and then death. The bright red spots upon the body, especially upon the face of the sick man, made other men turn away from him, afraid to try to help, and the sickness lasted from the beginning to the end, no more than half an hour. So it is a crazy thing, and we are introduced, as you said, to the king, to Prospero, the authority over all the land here, and he sees this and he does exactly what we'd expect any politician to do in time of great need. Take their families and their powerful friends to a safe location so that life can go on uninterrupted while common folk die. And that's what we have right here in the orange. When half of the people of his land had died, he called to him 1,000 healthy, happy friends, and with them went far away to live in one of his palaces. It was a large and beautiful stone building that had planned for himself. A strong, high wall circled it. This wall had gates of iron. The gentlemen, after they had entered, brought fire to heat the iron gates to make them close so firmly that nobody could open them. They could only forget. Here they could forget the sickness, the Red Death. They would leave the outside world to care for itself. Wow, Rich. Wow. I mean, think about
How
this.
prescient. But it is very, very prescient. And, you think about it, which I'm not sure. I mean, we certainly none of us did in the beginning of the pandemic, but it's much easier for the Faucis to make calls like this, right? And I remember him saying, it's just inconvenient economically for a little bit, but for them, they can go behind their gated communities, they can go to their 3,000 plus square foot homes, still entertain themselves. Whereas, not just financially, but I mean, the rest of us were enclosed in much smaller spaces, Frank, with a lot less to do. And here, that's what they did.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like we act like when these things come up, we act like we're new to this stuff. And the truth is, a lot of this is human nature. And this has been going on for a long time.
Yes, it is. And just like you were saying, our ruling class, they made sure to go on their boats in Michigan.
Yeah.
They had their Christmas parties like Deborah Burks and what's his name, Boris
Gavin
from
Newsom.
oh yeah, Gavin Newsom. In New York City, a lot of the health managers in New York City who were actually suggesting the lockdowns, they were having orgies. They were taking ecstasy and having orgies, and that's with half of New York City businesses being closed down, mostly permanently. And who can forget Nancy Pelosi's hair appointments and her
ice
her
cream.
gourmet ice cream?
I mean, tell me that doesn't sound right as they're describing the food, and I know that's later, the food, the wine, the extravagance of everything that he has in him, and of course, people he invites has to entertain themselves. I mean, it's really so appropriate for our own. So it's like over time, Frank, it's like this stuff never changes.
No.
And his setting is not even in his, obviously. I don't take it to be his actual time period. So basically, this is something that's been a consistent, at how the rich and powerful act, and especially back then when that is your station. How am I trying to say this? When that is your station, you are a lot less tempered by modesty, right?
Yeah.
And almost that no limits on what you want, you get. The world is going to bend to your will, and you'll see it how you want to see it. So he really thought that this was going to work.
Yeah, and Prospero had. Oh man, I'm sorry. I keep scaring myself. Prospero had supplied everything they needed. This is from the reading for their pleasure. There was music, there was dancing, there was beauty, there was food to eat and wine to drink. All these were within the wall, and within the wall they would be safe. Outside the wall walked the Red Death. It was near the end of the 5th month, 5 months, that Prospero asked his friends to come together for a dancing party, a masquerade. Everyone was asked to come dressed in fine clothes with his eyes or perhaps the whole face covered with a cloth mask. I mean, I just think about the cloth mask and
Come on.
Dude, it's creepy.
Come on.
I was referencing this story all throughout 2020 as well. I'm like, this is Masque of the Red Death right now. Even though, this is obviously a real, there was a virus, and that was 90% media panic versus the actual bloody liquefaction of people. But that's another thing altogether. But then we start getting the description of the room. And this is where a lot of the symbolism, I can't wait to hear what people think about the symbolism of the 7 rooms. I've heard a lot of, this is the 7 deadly sins, but they all come with different colors. Number 1, the first room is blue, then purple, green, yellow, white, violet, and then the final one, black and crimson. Okay, so the black room that has the grandfather clock in there, everybody's very afraid of going in there. They don't want to get dancing there. And every time the top of the hour strikes and the clock starts chiming, everybody is still silent. They stop dancing. They wait until the chiming is done. It calls everybody to an eerie attention, and then they go back to life. It's like every once in a while they get a reminder that whatever you think you're doing, you are not above the true clock of time. And
That's it. That's
that
it. Yeah. And actually, if you don't mind, I'll give him a little bit of a shout out here. Bill Gallagher, like one of my high school English teachers and American literature teachers, I was absolutely on the wrong path. And this is a teacher who got me on the right path. And he was fantastic. And we used to read a lot of stuff together, obviously. Longfellow, Poe. I remembered when I was rereading this story earlier today with people I was telling you about. Um, I remembered sitting in class with Bill Gallagher and discussing what I thought these rooms were. All right. And it's, I don't know, almost symbolic of the phases of your life, or the phases of like when you go through a hardship or there's a crisis or something and we're in denial. It's almost like these, that this goes in a progression all the while the clock is banging, as a constant reminder that, like, in your arrogance, in your hubris, you're still human. Time is moving on, and it will not escape. You will not escape that final room, right? You will not escape it. And then what waits for him at the end of this, right? So,
Mhm.
yeah, just amazing how memories can be triggered through, the humanities like this. And
Well,
I guess that's what I was, that's what kind of blew me away a little bit earlier today. But right, it starts blue, right, Frank? I mean, it starts, with I guess blue is seen as new, fresh, right?
yeah.
Yeah, optimistic even, right? Good feelings. And then obviously as they proceed through these rooms, it's not the same. Each window obviously is colored what? The same. So as you look outside, it's like from your point of view, when you're in that room, there's really no you can isolate yourself in that moment
You know, I
because
I have to bring it in. I wish I had
yeah,
done it in high school. I think in 2004, my band and I, we put together an EP in high school. Heavy hard rock. No, hardcore heavy metal. The band's name was Rotten Pain, and
that's heavy metal.
I know it was very 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 heavy. And we had an idea for the cover of our EP, and it was the Seventh Room. And I went to my
Yeah,
father and I said, "Listen,
that's cool.
can you paint?" And I got to get it. I'll bring it in and I'll put it on the screen to maybe tomorrow night, because I have it at the studio hanging up in the band room. And it was a painted Seventh Room, and I love the way that he put the clock up there, and if you have the forced perspective of going into the Crimson Room with because all these rooms are lit up by the sun that's passing through stained glass. And
Yes.
oh man, it always created just an amazing imagery. When I read this even years ago, and I said I wanted to see it, and I think it would be a really badass band cover, and I'll show you guys tomorrow at some point. But here's the thing: what you're talking about was the hubris and the running from something that you think you can actually get away with. And
Yeah.
I think that is where the piper, the whole, time to pay the piper moment, when the mysterious masquerader appears sometime around midnight. And even though everyone is costumed and presented in all types of odd and wonderful things, here's one passage over here. Nevertheless, it was a happy and beautiful masquerade, and you may be sure that clothes and dancers chose to wear the clothes and the dancers that the dancers chose to wear. Their costumes were strange and wonderful. The dancers looked like the forms we might see in troubled dreams, and the dreams danced softly through the rooms, taking the color of the rooms as they moved. It did not
Right.
seem that their steps followed the music, but that the music rose from their steps. Beautifully written. It's just beautifully written. But then comes this masquerader that is very perturbing to people, because even though everyone is costumed and presented in all types of odd and wonderful ways, this figure has dared to remind them of the bloody plague
Yeah,
over
that's right.
which
That's right.
they were convinced that they had been victorious.
Yeah.
You
And
don't.
deluded themselves, they
Yes,
deluded themselves, and he gets in there, basically gets in their faces and gives them a reality check, and it
dressed as a
disturbs
as a
them.
plague victim.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the reality. You don't want to be reminded. All of a sudden, you're
No.
face to face with what they say. I think that's the creepiest part about this is that most people who were laying eyes on this mysterious masquerader couldn't tell whether or not it was a mask or actually a dead man's face.
Which is how I mean, this is Poe for you. That forces you as a reader to think about how vivid his costume was, his appearance was, or how disturbing his appearance was to them, and how convincing it was, right? Um, I don't know how you're formatted if you go into this with people, but like, don't we like to believe the lie, Frank? So isn't it so disturbing to them, or wouldn't it be to us, to have everything interrupted like that by something that's, I don't want to say grotesque, but certainly is going to make you, sit back. It breaks the fun. It ends the moment, right?
Mhm.
And isn't it more is the vision itself more disturbing, or is it like the reminding? Because we want to sit in our delusions, and don't we? And we want to sit and believe lies that we tell ourselves. And when something like that reminds you, or, he's like a personification of it, but it could be anything in life where it reminds you that maybe you don't have this already, you're gonna have to face this.
Yep.
It's just Poe making it physical and making you think about how disturbing visually it must have been for them. But I don't know, it just takes on a lot deeper meaning to me, because we want to delude ourselves of this stuff. We want to ignore what is reality sometimes, and create these alternate experiences for ourselves and not deal with it.
Well,
Well,
let's think about this there too, because obviously we're talking about a. This is a lot more relevant to us right now because we are fresh, not even really totally out of it. We're living in a world changed by a bioterrorism event, and so this is very very distinctly, um, familiar to us.
yeah.
But if you were really to wash away all of our perception of the last 4 years and change now, what you would actually have here too is an opportunity to see the rooms as, it's maybe just our fear of death in general.
Yeah, sure.
It can come in bloody terror, or it can just be a whispering passing during the night. But the other thing is that the phases of life, maybe the seven rooms, is just moving through life and wanting to avoid death, and that even in our dreams, where we have dreams about dying and we wake up and we're so relieved that it was just a dream. All of that relief usually gets chased away when you have another one of your existential crisis moments and you realize one day I am going to
I'm
face
going
this.
to yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, this is for, and of course, Poe lives in that headspace. It comes down into everything that he does. Very, that's so it doesn't have to be so much about a specific thing. It could just be about gripping, your grip with what life is going to bring us. And here's that one post about everybody's despair. In such a group as this, only a very strange masquerader could have caused such a feeling. Even among those who laugh at both life and death, some matters cannot be laughed at. Everyone seems now to feel deeply to feel that the stranger should not have been allowed to come and dressed in such clothes. He was tall and very thin, and covered in head to foot like a dead man prepared for the grave. The mask which covered his face, or was it really a mask? The mask which covered his face was so much like the face of a dead man that the nearest eye could not see the difference, and yet all this might have been acceptable. But the masquerader, whom nobody knew, had made himself look like the Red Death itself. His clothes were spotted with blood, his mask over his face was covered with the terrible red spots, or perhaps it was indeed his face.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I mean, like at this point, you're at the last page of reading. It's such a short story, and you're at the last page, and you're just saying, "Oh shit!" And now Prospero is like, "Who dares take that guy?" He goes into the
Till the end.
I'm
Till
telling.
the end.
Yep.
Arrogance till the end, right?
Yep.
And before you read that, I just wanted to say, because what you just said, the clock, right? Like, we have these little reminders. So Poe can have so many different meanings to these things he inserts in his story. I mean, of course, he no doubt has his own meaning that he's thinking. What I love is Poe's style, for people who don't know Poe, is that he didn't appreciate when the style that so many people took on back then of meanings, whether difficult to discern or not, being so obvious and having such like a simple structure in his writing like everybody else did back then. He actually appreciated how much more difficult, or at least some of these, I don't want to call them idiosyncratic, it's not the right word, but um he didn't like the normal layout of literature, and he wanted meanings to be interpreted in many different ways. And you were just talking before about people having this concept: the rooms are phases of life and you're going through them, but every once in a while you get reminded, because we hate waking up in those, hate those realizations that, yeah, one day we're mortal and we're going to die. It's like being faced with that mortality. And what happens every time, right? Every hour, that clock reminds them constantly until it gets to midnight and we get to this part of his end. But throughout that time, when we're all going through life trying to have a good time and trying to kind of ignore that reality, there's still the binging, there's still that ringing every so often, Frank, that reminds us that it's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and as the general narrative about death, there is this quote that I always comes back to me every once in a while, which also ties into the hubris of the elite concept there. But at the end of the game, the king and the pawn go back into the same box.
Yeah.
I always remember that. And that's the one thing here. Maybe the common folk over the past 5 months in this story who were being ravaged by this plague, they were being destroyed all along the countryside. They didn't have the privilege of having these tall walls and their welded shut gates and years worth of fantastic food and everything else and enjoyment. But at the same time, the kings and the jesters and the rabble, they're all going to be buried in the same fields. And that's just really that's really what I think about. The other thing I like about this book, as of course, just to finish it up real quick, Prospero chases the masked visitor into the seventh room, thinking that he's going to do away with him for ruining his party. The only time that anybody stepped foot into the crimson red room, and that is when it all goes on. He goes in and seizes the masquerader. Prospero just falls down dead, and they realize that there's nobody even underneath the robes. That it's just death itself. It had come for them all, and the entire kingdom, the palatial mansion, is just essentially wiped out over the course of the next hour or so, and that's how it all ends. It's just the
worst nightmare.
It is
their worst suspicion and their worst nightmare, when he's detailing what he looks like and the costume, the outfit, and people are doing what? They're wondering, is this even a show? Is this even a costume? Or is it, is that real? Is that blood real? Is this right? So it turns out, it is in fact their worst fear, which is really all of our worst fear, whether we want to admit it or not.
In many ways. Right. Now we're going to go on to the audience now and what's been left in the thread, and we'll talk about that. The one thing, and I just want to apologize to all of the monthly subscribers who usually show up for the book clubs. I know that you're probably being drowned out by a lot of people who are here for the first time. Some of them really interested, I'm sure. Others that are probably just talking about other things, and I understand. I should
hopefully not. I should be reading it. This is fantastic.
I know. They're probably this. But what I will say is, next time we do a public, I will make sure that there is a exclusive chat just for the regulars there, because there is a lot of very amazing interaction in the chat room that I know I'm just realizing right now is probably lost to that. But still, we have the thread, and we're going to work on that right now. So the first one up, before I would say one other thing for me, Rich, and I wonder if there's anything else that you appreciate just on the writing style, aside from how, flowery and wonderful it all is, even though it's just so morbid. I like the third person vantage point with the writing here, which is normally with Poe, everything I've read has been in first person. it makes me feel like I'm at the party, which is not actually very comforting. I don't want to be.
Yeah, but
I
I was
don't.
just you took that right out of my mouth
I
though.
don't
But
want
I
to be.
think he did this. I mean, we can't wake the guy up and ask him, but I think he did this, Frank, to make you uncomfortable. I think that's the exact purpose of why that he did this, which is also, I mean, Poe is very descriptive, but come on, he fits a lot in 5 pages here. I mean, details about the room, the foods. What is he doing? I mean, it's a lot appealing to your senses. He's appealing to what is human and almost the primal things that come with being a human,
Mhm.
as is the fear of death and the stuff that when we later think about it, how we try to again, it really is a delusion. I think to some degree we try to delude ourselves, but that what I love about it here is the change in person. And I mean, he's always descriptive. I mean, look at the Telltale Heart, right? So that's another one where he's really trying to get you to see it. But here, because of the person, the viewpoint does change, he allows you to try to attend that party. And why? Because we really all are attending this party, right? They're elitists, and he's really hitting home to like the arrogance of human nature, but or the arrogance of that, especially the ruling classes, people who think they're above it all. They're going to somehow defy the laws of nature, right? Um, it makes it easier when you're part of higher society to think those thoughts, right? And to convince yourself you just have a power that others less fortunate than you don't have, or at least you feel like you do, right? So he has to do this because maybe the reader is not part of that class, right? So he has to describe that to get you to understand what it would have been like for them at this event, at this party.
Yeah.
He has to do that.
Yeah.
I
And,
mean,
and, he, and he,
reader in his time would not have known this stuff, Frank. You know what I mean?
No, and I always whenever I have read this, I always envision the because actually I've never watched the Vincent Price movie, and I downloaded it so that
What?
I know I downloaded it so that we can play it some other time on the after hours programming sometime this week. I wasn't going to do it tonight because we're going to get off here. It's already going to be close to 10 o'clock our time. But I'm going to watch it this week. But I always envisioned like 14th century. A 14th century setting,
Yeah.
But anyway, let's get to this thread now. Very wonderful thoughts, though, Rich. Here is the thread. First one up is from Jalen Wennings. He is a veteran, and everything I'm seeing coming from the chat room is everybody's having a lot of fun.
Brother.
I'm seeing a lot of people having fun, and I'm happy for that. I want to do this a couple of times a year where we do it public so people can see. It feels so good to read, and if it wasn't for this book club, I've had a hard time holding myself to reading this consistently. So I invite you all along. And Rich, you got to come back and do something like this again because you're
Oh,
wonderful.
I'd love to. This is a blast. And I think what you just said is why I started the book club too. I love to read. With what we do, Frank, we were talking, you and I together, about just like sometimes you need to decompress, and reading used to be that for me. So I mean, I'm loving this. I'd love to come back and do this again.
Great.
I think that's the same reason I started it, frankly.
Well,
I mean that, and I wanted people to read things. Maybe I'm hoping to reach them with something that maybe they're not familiar with.
Absolutely. I know from experience people appreciate that. It's just change in routine there's nothing more refreshing sometimes. Here's from Jalen Wennings. He said, I'd been anticipating reading this story ever since it was announced. I'm almost positive I read it around the time that I was in 7th grade. If I remember correctly, we were assigned to read Telltale Heart, The Pit and the Pendulum, me too, and The Fall of the House of Usher, and one other Poe story out of our choosing, and I'm almost certain I chose this. My teacher was a big fan of Poe as well as Vincent Price movies. Pretty crazy for a tiny Catholic school in rural Ohio, huh? I remember this time fondly. It was about the time of year, mid-October, and when we had completed that Edgar Allan Poe reading lesson after a week or so, she brought in homemade apple cider and those little powdered donuts for a snack while the class watched Pit and the Pendulum starring Vincent Price. I have seen that. It was a perfect on a cold, rainy day at school. She was an awesome teacher. In contrast, my son is now that age, and they read stuff like Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Oh, well, at least it's not some trans shit. Okay. And he goes on to say, I must say, now that I'm knocking on the door of 41, this story gave me chills. I even went back and reread this at night with just a tiny bit of light to really give it some atmosphere. Upon the second reading, I came to the theory that perhaps Prince Prospero had not intended to outlast the Red Death or even hide from it. After seeing his dominions already half depopulated, he decided to go out on his terms, and he'd already concluded that you can't beat death, as if he just said, screw it, I'm throwing a party and I'm taking all these rich-ass bastards with me. In being a masquerade ball, where the Red Death finally came in, he chose in on their demise. He chose to join in on their demise by adding his own theatrics when he ordered the figure to be sized, knowing nobody would be chasing him through the chambers with a dagger, possibly even faking his death so he this is a great theory, so he could lie there and watch his plan unfold. I don't know. It's just a theory I had. I'm also perfectly content with the traditional interpretations of the story, especially the time that you've talked about it previously on your show. I just like having my own twisted, dark interpretations. Also, the link you provided was worded much more of a modern fashion than the one I had in print. It's cool to compare the two. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, that's probable. That's funny he says that. I gotta say, Frank, I gotta say, first of all, you're a heck of a writer yourself. I mean, and that's just a comment. That's very well illustrated. But also, I really think Poe would love that you came up with your own interpretation, which is what I was trying to say before. There are traditional interpretations of Telltale Heart, The Pit and the Pendulum. Obviously, this one there's but he didn't like that about literature. He wanted things to be very difficult to contemplate, and he wanted you as a person because he was such a deep thinker. You said you're knocking on the door of 41. I just turned 43. I'm certainly reading this story with very different eyes than when I was probably a sophomore in high school, right?
Hmm.
I mean, yes, you know about your own mortality, but it's not something you really think. It's like a million miles away, right? At that point, Poe spent even young, and of course, age is relevant, right? Because we obviously have a longer life expectancy now, but he spent a lot of his time contemplating the stuff that probably modern Americans and modern everyone in most first world countries don't really contemplate until later, Frank.
Yeah.
So it's really cool that he came up with his own interpretation. I love it. It's actually I love it. I'm not sure. I've got my own that I think is more along the lines, I guess, of the traditional, but I really love that he has his own, and I wish I want to see it that way. Let me
Okay.
put it that way.
Yeah,
I just have less of I have less faith in like ruling class and people like
well,
him.
this next one, then you're gonna really love this game. This came from Krista, my producer, and she simply said, "Life imitates art. Prospero, Newsom, and revelers. Here they are: California Medical Association lobbying Janice Norman, CMA President Dustin Corcoran. They're all just having a good time, just dining with the doctors and doing their things. These are
Yep.
the people who told you to stay home and not see your family on Thanksgiving and all that stuff.
Don't bury your loved ones when
Yep,
they die.
yep,
You know,
yeah. That's
it's
it.
insane.
That's it. Okay. So the next one is from Robert Solario, and Robert says, Jalen Wenning's so right about the modern language used in this adaptation. Listen to this beautiful
Changed,
passage.
huh?
I didn't know, but
Either.
here. Listen, he said, listen to this beautiful passage. Quote. And anon, there strikes the ebony clock, which stands at the hall of the velvet. And then for a moment, all is still, and all is silent save the voice of the clock. The dreams are stiff frozen as they stand. Oh, shit. But
Wow,
the
yeah.
echoes of the chime die away. They have endured but an instant and a light half subdued laugh. Oh, wait, the instant and a light. Half subdued laughter floats after them as they depart. And now again the music swells and the dreams live and writhe to and fro more merrily than ever, taking hue from many tinted windows through which stream the rays from the tripods. Or the ending, he says. Here's another quote. And now was acknowledged the presence of the Red Death. He had come like a thief in the night, and one by one dropped the revelers in
Like
blood.
a thief in the
Like a
night.
thief. There you go. Like a thief in the night.
Yeah.
Revelers in the blood bedewed halls of the revel, and died each in the despairing posture of his fall. Just died where they stand. And the life of the ebony clock went out with that, the last of the gay. And it's it. The clock just stopped going too. I'm telling you, the clock.
This is because there's
It
nobody
was
else left to hear it,
It was
Frank.
it's the clock of life, but it's also like you said, if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's there to hear it, did it actually really fall?
Did it fall?
And the flames of the tripods expired. The darkness and decay and the Red Death held illimitable dominion over all. End quote. Damn, Frank, the link you gave us is an abomination. I'm sure Hogan. I didn't even know.
Because they're right. I'm listening and I'm thinking and I'm telling you, and I probably read it in its original form or its older print. Because
I may have read it like that years ago. I just forgot about it.
You probably did. It's a new thing to not read things as they were written. This is like a new thing. When we were younger, it probably was the original.
The darkness and decay and the Red Death held illimitable dominion over all. Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Shit.
It's and it does give it different meaning, does it not? I mean, when you're listening to that, it I don't know, it gives it different meaning. And also, I mean, I actually found it to be more descriptive, obviously more difficult. We don't speak like that anymore, but it still is more descriptive because it's hard to put his original intent into modern words. I don't even know how you do that. I would rather read things as they were written, Frank.
Yeah. Well, somebody had to go and reinterpret Marcus Aurelius. When I sit down and I read my copy of Meditations, it's it's like written like somebody on Tumblr would have written it. So I understand how it happens for sure. Here's one from Dooku Dan. It's a couple of paragraphs, but there's only a couple left on this page. Having read Masque of the Red Death in a Poe anthology and then presented by the above link, I first thought the story had been published in several variants, even thinking that the authorized anthology I read from was an error. No, it's just that the U.S. State Department, whose website is the source for the link above, states that it, quote, is slightly adapted for language learners. Shit.
There it is.
Well, see, I didn't look that far. I just grabbed it because I didn't know, whatever. Language learners, several Poe stories. I think slightly adapted is an understatement. Apparently, the State Department intended these for slightly adapted Poe stories for high, intermediate, and advanced learners of English. In other words, for people whom English is not their native language.
Yeah.
Got it. It's comparable to slightly adapting Hamlet's soliloquy to read, "To live or not to live." That is the big question. Is it better to put up with all the crap that life throws at you, or is it just end it all and be done with it? That's my slightest adaptation. Okay, guys, I get it. I screwed up. Many of us.
Listen, I'm glad you did, and I didn't go get it on the shelf. I was reading it today. I was telling Frank, folks out there, I was on a Zoom. It's just like work stuff. And I was telling them about doing this. So I read it. And I'm just telling you from this crowd, if it wasn't this version, I don't know that I would have gotten the reception. I'm serious. I don't know if it would have, because I read it to them. I kind of like gave them a dramatic reading. And then ironically, he's one of the guys on the call said, wait a minute, this sounds familiar. Goes into his living room, Frank, on the shelf, pulls out a collection from Edgar Allan Poe, and he's like, this is it, isn't it? Opens it up, and obviously it's a Masque of the Red Death. I'm like, yeah, that's it. But he didn't read anything from it, so now I'm curious, and I have to ask him, which version is it?
That would I can't wait to hear now. And I'm gonna go make sure that I get an essential copy of short stories and Poe. I don't have any Poe on my shelf. I need to have them there. For me,
we have it. It comes with like it's like American. There's different series. One's the American literature classics, and then there's the British literature classics. So like there are different collections and works for depending on what period or what area, what genre really that it comes down to. It's cool, and you can find them on Amazon actually.
Okay.
They all look the same, which is really neat because it looks like they all belong next to each other on the shelf. It's cool.
Yeah, he'll go right next to my Mark Twain.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course that's there.
Yeah. And we haven't read Mark Twain on this book club yet. That will definitely happen. All right.
Laura
so
Mark Twain.
For me, then she's got to be in on that one then. For me, the experience of reading Masque over the years, Dooku Dan continues, Having enjoyed the film versions of the story, there is no doubt a natural yearning to figure out what the story means. What do we know that is due to many tragedies in life? Poe was obsessed with death and decay. Some even say that he himself was mad. Indeed, Prince Prospero could be viewed as mad. He is presented as a powerful, wealthy aristocrat who is so haughty and that he is self-convinced he alone can prevent pestilence from intruding into his castle and hurting his friends. He believes within his battlements he alone has the power to protect against something that is unseen. He is protecting his is he protecting his world from something spiritual? Prospero is amoral and decadent. Many in the era following the emergence of AIDS have read into the Masque as a pestilence as AIDS like disease, and is more of a moral punishment, a rightful end to the depravity Prospero and his ilk have brought upon themselves. I think because Poe's wife was dying from tuberculosis around the time that he wrote this story in 1842, he was exercising his emotions over her impending death, and for him, yet another close family member due to leave him forever, joining all those who had abandoned him.
Fire.
It's crazy. It's also interesting, along with Cheever's The Swimmer and Connell's Most Dangerous Game, which we have just read in subsequent weeks before this. This story also depicts aristocrat upper echelons of society as depraved, debauched, and uncaring for anyone other than their fellow moneyed power players. Prince Prospero cares nothing about what could be considered his subjects, only his cronies. I mean, that is just coincidental in how this all came together. Because I picked these stories, but it is coincidental that from John Cheever to Richard Connell to this one, there is that aristocracy, upper echelon depravity kind of a thing that runs through it all. It's crazy.
Frank, but they make such a good point that they even made that connection, because what does that say? Like, when did we forget this? Like, this society is like, let me put it this way. When we poll in 2016, we started calling these people who weren't quite elites, right? But they aspire to be. They aspire to live like that and separated from the rest of the lower filth, right? The unwashed masses. We used to call them wannabe elites. All right, it was like a term that I coined to try to explain the yuppie who was like voting for Hillary Clinton. I don't want to get political here, but I'm saying like that's the point I'm trying to make. It's like somewhere along the line we forgot that has been the natural view of ruling classes forever. For a very long forever. And somehow it got, or at least some of us, came to believe that that's cool or something, right? And look at our culture. I mean, what entertained people throughout the first part of this millennium, Frank, right? Reality TV shows about the Kardashians,
Mob wives.
and their extravagance. Right, exactly. Like somewhere along the line that got cool, or that got like not even worse than cool, to a something that we aspire to and aspire to become, when for most of our history, I mean, of course, people always pursued wealth, and they always wanted to have station. Of course, people have always had ambition, but it was never something that we kind of like tricked ourselves into thinking, that wasn't the reality with this class, right? Like that isn't how they are, and that isn't their nature. Or all of our natures, if we allow ourselves to get like that. But I don't know, it's an interesting observation that commenter makes, because they connected the dots there very simply, and it feels like we're going along we're like forgetting all these lessons, these basic lessons, right? We're
Yeah.
just forgetting them along the way.
And
It's tragic.
he
It's tragic.
he has a couple of great statements yet to be made over here in these last couple of paragraphs, and there's only like one or two shorter spots after this, so we're actually right on schedule. We should this is going to be a really tight hour. I love it. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. He says again, Poe depicts the prince's living spaces, and by extension his cronies, in the most garish colors. The bright, bold colors were not customary for everyday people in Poe's day. The early 19th century only saw such colors in paintings and in the fabulous garments of royalty. Everyday clothes would be black, green, gray, pale brown, or white. Buildings and dwellings in Poe's day would be painted in mainly dark colors with cream, gray, white highlights, or just stained wood. Imagine the shock element of reading about a group of people living in such unnecessary ornamentation. Um,
Yeah.
he says the rooms, as Poe describes them, begin with the east, the blue room, the representation of a beginning, the arrival of a new
That's right.
day.
I take it the same way.
Poe describes the next 5 rooms, which I can see a progression of a day or time itself as we begin from in the east of blue and in the end of dark, black western rooms with deep red highlights, an ominous sunset. His final room is also the only one that contains a ticking clock, an ebony clock, which seems seemingly a ticking away the time escaping from the lives of Prospero and his fellow fools. Poe seems to say that we are all foolish mortals in a meaningless life. Poe's writing shows that he held much knowledge of Shakespeare and also the Bible. Found in his play Midsummer's Night Dream, Shakespeare's immortal epigram, quote, "Lord, what fools these mortals be," would not be out of place in Poe's Masque, nor would Macbeth's speech following the death of Lady Macbeth, quote, "And all our yesterdays have lighted fools, the ways the dusty death, out, brief candle, life's but a walking shadow, a poor player, that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing," end quote. This would also,
What a comment.
dude,
What a comment.
dude, we get the
Fantastic,
every time
man.
we get together
Wow.
for book club, we get these comments. It's incredible. This would also befit Poe's story. At the conclusion of Masque, following the prince's death, Poe says that the Red Death, quote, "had come like a thief in the night," which is a direct allusion to the New Testament descriptions of the second coming of Christ, as well as the comparing of the end of the prince, his cronies, and all their way of life as an apocalypse. Even though Poe decried writing morality tales, there's no question that the Red Death serves as a kind of karmic end to these meaningless people. However, disease is not aware of whom it strikes, so it is a thing that just is and strikes it when it is unexpected and undeserved. But it is the story. It has a feeling of being appropriate in this story. Poe's sadness over his wife's terminal illness, I think, has to be a reason, or even the reason for having such a fatalistic view. His atheism also plays into this, even though he was fascinated by Roman Catholicism. He was raised Anglican, though, but in a more anthropological way. And finally, his last quote is, "Overall, as with all Poe, he's a master of condensing human experience into prose or poetry in which there is nothing unnecessary or out of place. I could not imagine changing his words for anything, as he was a precise writer. Reading a slightly, okay, now I'm going to get whipped over the hands again. Reading a slightly adapted Poe story would be like reading the English translation of
we go.
Tolstoy." Or so, I get it. Thank you.
I think their point is well made with that, though, because I mean, it was far superior. Reading it and listening, as you were recalling, it's far superior. I have to go and make sure myself that my kids aren't reading something
Adapted.
that's inferior. No, I mean, because it is. I
True.
mean, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
it's completely inferior. I just want to go back to the rooms because that first, you do get some great comments, and my book club is the same way. Such thoughtful remarks. But I just want to go back to the rooms because I always took it exactly the same way, right? Blue, the beginning, right? And also the imagery dealing with those windows. And I think get overlooked a lot. The windows are what? They're the same, they're painted glass. That is the same color of each room, the theme of each room. So why? Because as we're going through life and we're in those different stages, it's very difficult for us to see anything else. What is a window? A window is like a view, a point of view, right? I mean, what does it symbolize, right? You look out of a window to see what's outside the structure that you're in, right? Beyond your present state. And the windows being in that same color, Frank, and really obstructing your view into another room or of another room, right? So when you're in the blue room, what do? The you imagine your state as being, being in that particular blue room. You're not thinking about the future and the darker rooms that come later.
Yeah.
Right. So I really think we overlook the significance of why he brought up those windows
Yeah.
and why he drew them in that way that he did, because we're unable to see past our current state quite a bit. Right.
Well,
We really are.
there's also the one thing when we talked about the dancing. when you're saying that whether the dancing was he was moving to the music or if the music was coming
Music
from
was
the dance. And
yeah.
that's just the way it is. It's just all of us. We move through that blue room into the orange, into the white, and all that stuff. And we're going through life, and we have the vigor of youth and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, you have your first I don't know, plantar fasciitis. You have something happens to your prostate for the first time, and then all of a sudden you realize what the hell is that 2 rooms over? Why is it so dark? And because that's the one thing, everybody's moving very languidly through all of the 6 rooms, but avoiding like hell. I don't want to go anywhere near that one. So it does become one of those things that becomes a lot more, you have more presence of mind of that approaching end as you're going through this party, this experience that is life. But as you see, you can try not to enter into the 7th room, but the clock is going to ring eventually. And here's a couple short ones. Mike Rogan says, my first time reading this story, I'm sure that there are many things to say about it. My first thought was that the parable of the rich fool in Luke 12. He decided
Yeah.
to store up grains for himself, eat, drink, and be merry, but his life was to be demanded of him that night. And Jalen Wedding said, somehow Jesus' parables always seem to resonate through time. And then you have more. We have 2 more left. Vesper says, for me, the Masque of the Red Death is an allegory. Poe has reminded that time and death care not what if we be a peasant or a king. There you go. All going to the same box. Time is unwavering in its march. Death remains ever inevitable. In the loyal duties to their very nature, both are steadfast in their treatment of us all. And then finally, Molly Arty says, Poe does have a way of leaving you chewing on his words. His tales have a depth that sticks with you, begging to be unpacked and mulled over like fine wine. In this short story, the attendees, wrapped up in their opulence, have no regard how they affect lives and the events going on outside their self-made cocoon, yet unable to escape the inevitable, which brought to my mind the current societal situation. Pick your favorite issue, where the political class thinks that they can escape the inevitable casualties of their own decisions, such as how it ties into Diddy and his evil revelry and believing it can go on forever and escape any serious consequences.
Right.
Makes me want to say, who the hell do you think you are to think that you can
Yeah.
go do the most egregious
That's
things without equally horrible outcome? And finally,
yes.
she says, this story and looking at today's points about the human condition hasn't changed since Poe's time. And I would have to say that since the beginning of time, yes, we are that stupid. And I would say, Rich,
I totally agree with this commenter.
this,
I do.
I want to leave. I want to leave you with something, a thought of my own. The reason why that I always bring this up over, I don't know, 10, 15 years, whenever I see a story developing that really smacks of this, the hubris of the elite and us having to just put up with it while we're living with all the fallout of their ideas, whether it be immigration fallout or bioterrorism, whatever the hell. It acts as a tool for understanding what's happening, but also, even though this is the most morbid story you can think of, I mean, there's other morbid stories out there, probably just it's equal, but there's not many more that go beyond this. There is a comfort in this where us little people can always say, okay, perhaps earthly justice is going to always be evading the people who are running this all into the ground, but they are not getting a get out of jail free card. They are not getting out of jail free. It's not happening. And eventually, it doesn't matter where they wall themselves up or how much gourmet ice cream they shove down their gullet, they are always going to have to pay the piper. And the more they live like this, the more they're going to have to answer for.
Yeah, that's a great obsession. One of the prior commenters had mentioned that how well versed, and even I think it's fair to say Poe was intrigued by some religions, certainly the Catholic religion. Isn't that a major, theme of it, right? I think there's so much that gets included in his thoughts. I think it is a comfort to let the people who would have read Poe almost like a I don't want to say a smack on in the face to them, but like, look, a wake up call to some of the people that would have read Poe at that time. Look, you're not in the end, you're not better than any. of the rest of us, right? You do end up just like us, right? So and then for those who would obviously be of lesser station, Frank, it would be comforting. And you said you pictured it. I think you said like the 14th century. I don't know why. I think of it during almost like Medici Italy or Medici like Florence, because you have these this extravagant masquerade, right? And I guess maybe, not maybe. I mean, if people know what the period I'm talking about before the Renaissance, so really that like leads into it. Patronage was a huge thing. There was a massive class divide.
So 16th century.
Yeah, yeah, I think of it. We're coming at. I know that obviously the bubonic plague happened during medieval times before the Renaissance. But I just that's when I imagine this party. That's the time and the period, the setting that I view it in, and it very much fits with what you're saying, because you had people who, look, that family was like the OG of gangsters, and it was like them in the church rank, and they ran it, and they had everything, and they were the haves, and then there were the have-nots, and they certainly would have that would have been in character behavior, is where I'm going with this. And to Poe, I mean, he comes later, obviously, but it's a great example if you're trying to make that point, to make that setting.
Yeah.
Interesting that he didn't, which doesn't anybody else find it interesting that he doesn't give more detail to when it is? It's like everything else Edgar Allan Poe does. He wants you to strain and stress over the meaning. He wants you to kind of let your imagination take off with it. It's not almost like there's almost no wrong answer. You see it how you interpret it, and you're gonna get the most meaning out of it if you do. That's Poe,
Yes,
textbook Poe.
yes, and I appreciate you bringing that to the table, and I also appreciate you your take on the altered version that we all watched a little bit. I do think that maybe from here, people, this is almost like a jump start for a lot of people's private reading, and this this is advanced. Poe, Fitzgerald.
Yeah, it is.
You go to Fitzgerald or Whitney or and even Mark Twain. I mean, a lot of that stuff is some advanced.
Right?
Yeah, Walt Whitman. I mean, there's a lot. That's a lot of advanced stuff, and especially like I've read quite a bit of F. Scott Fitzgerald, and it is. Let me tell you. I spent a summer reading him maybe about 6 or 7 years ago. I just wanted to get into the classics. I was reading a lot of Hemingway and Fitzgerald at the same time. And it's like, it is truly an extinct language. You need to have a dictionary and a thesaurus with you when you're reading Fitzgerald if you haven't gone that far. It's one of those things. So I'm actually happy that for what we have done here, we use this document, because obviously you can go and get the original one right now somewhere on the internet and enjoy it, and then watch the Vincent Price movie sometime this week when I announce it. But Rich, this has been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Frank. This was I had a good time. I really did, and thanks so much to the listeners and the viewers with thoughtful comments and contributions. Really, looking forward to doing it again. It's great. I'll tell you what. After this, I'll just end with this. There's no way I'm watching The Fall of the House Usher on Netflix after making a comparison from the modern day version to the original text.
I didn't even know.
No way I'm doing it. Oh, you haven't heard
I haven't
of
heard.
it?
I haven't heard.
I heard. I just haven't watched yet. It's been out since I believe last Halloween, and it was something that I just didn't want to touch. I was afraid that it would be ruined for me. So this made up my mind. I will not be watching it.
It's better to save yourself the heartache these days with all the adaptations for modern audiences. We know what that means. So, Rich Barris, everybody. Hey, Rich, I know that you're going to be on with us for a little bit on Election Eve on November 4th, but I'll be in touch. Maybe we can get you for a little bit of a progress report before then.
Yeah, this was fun, Frank. Thanks for inviting me. I really enjoyed this,
All right.
and all the best to you and everyone else out there. Thanks.
All right,
Talk to you soon, brother.
thank Laura for letting us have you here for a little bit in overtime
Of
hours.
course.
Okay, take care.
Take care, buddy.
Be well. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, what can I say? It was an awesome night. I knew it was going to be. It is the 21st day of October. There is one more here. I just saw right now. Came in. Ali Q said Poe's allegory using 7 rooms that suggests the passage of time from the early part of life, the blue room, to the final stage of life in the black room. The rooms are situated in such a way that you cannot see into the next room until you are in it because you have to make turns. Yes. Corresponds to the fact that much as we plan for the next stage of life, we can never be sure of what will happen 10, 20, 50 years down the road. Another way to look at those 7 rooms is that they represent the 7 deadly sins. I've heard that a lot over the years. Prospero is guilty of pride for thinking that he can outwit death. And so, one way or another, we must die, whether you take the natural route and live through all the stages, or by committing some deadly sin that you wish to hasten your own demise. The ebony clock is the instrument which chimes the theme Memento Mori. Remember, you must die. Every time the clock chimes, the revelers get a little solemn. This is when they recognize our mortality at times, certain times in our busy lives, such as when someone your age dies or you have a health scare. Great choice, Frank. Yes, I know. And listen, for those of you out there saying, boy, I can't do this every week, it's really it's Halloween-y. It's October. Hold on a second. I'm going to read you something in my little book club book that Lauren got me. Okay? I'm just going to read you. Since it's a public showing, I want everybody to hear that because it's really impressive. And I love it. Where the hell are we? Here we go. Reading list. This is what we started with. Windswept House. Maliki Martin. Fantastic. And you can read all these on your own. They're all out there public now. After a while, I put them public. Fantastic. Creepy. Very real. It's about the emergence of the New World Order through the emergence of the deep church, the deep state, everything that we've been talking about for a while now. Fantastic. That January of 2023, The Great Divorce, C.S. Lewis. Wonderful. Brave New World. Yes, got a little bit depressing there with Jay Dyer, but fantastic. You got to read it. Shoeless Joe. Wonderful read for the summertime that we did with Charlie Robinson. Devil in the White City, 2 Octobers ago. That was with Lindsay Sharman. Great. About the 1893 World's Fair. And H.H. Holmes. A little bit morbid, but a lot more interesting than morbid. Let's see here. The Godfather, last October. I'm sorry. Devil in the White City was last August. Godfather, Lucifer's Hammer was this January. That turned out to be pretty prescient in its own way. The Robe, talk about amazing. Talk about inspiring. Faith inspiring, uplifting, that we read that during Easter. Amazing. Dandelion Wine, wonderful summer read, inspiring, thought-provoking, emotional. It's a fantastic thing there. Then we go right into The Never-Ending Story, which is fantastical. We just finished that in August. That was wonderful. Then The Swimmer was 2 weeks ago. Most Dangerous Game was last week. Masque of the Red Death tonight. And The Monkey's Paw will be next Monday. And that will conclude 2024. And The Monkey's Paw, yes, is very creepy. And it's all about consequences and wishes and getting what you wish for. And then we'll go and turn the page again. So it's not all doom and gloom. It's actually really, really amazing. And I feel exercised every time we do it. So if you enjoyed yourself, I'd love to see you again in the future. Thank you, guys and gals, for everything. And have a wonderful night. I'll see you tomorrow night, 7 o'clock.